Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video, and today we're going to continue the hashtag AskEck topics. So if you want to submit a question for my future consideration, leave it down below with the hashtag AskEck so I can find it when it's time to make the next video. Today's first question comes from Nuclear Tactics, who says, what was the transition from Phase 1 clone armor to Phase 2 armor like? And the thing we know more than anything is that the transition was almost complete. Almost all clones we see after Phase 2 is introduced are using Phase 2 armor. Now, there are some exceptions. Probably most notably, we have Captain Rex. He had among the most unique armor of all clones because he incorporated Phase 1 and Phase 2 armor together. You can see he's welded various bits from his original armor onto his new Phase 2 armor. Most notably, he's kept his Phase 1 mouthpiece and portions of the body plating. And the most obvious difference between Phase 1 and 2 armor is simply the appearance. Phase 1 clone armor, the kind we see in Episode 2, is very basic. All armor was identical or near identical. It was the stock white, almost Stormtrooper-esque design, with the only changes being usually related to rank. There was no customization either to reflect a clone's personality or the specific mission parameters of a given clone. You will sometimes see small additions or pauldrons or skirts added, but generally one Phase 1 clone looks pretty similar to another Phase 1 clone. The armor was also quite protective, but it didn't allow for full movement and was uncomfortable. And really, the actions of the clones themselves further pushed the development of Phase 2 armor. The New Essential Guide to Weapons and Technology says, the armor is flexible enough to allow a variety of movements and positions, but is extremely uncomfortable, especially if worn while sitting. This hampered clone trooper pilots who eventually began using modified versions of the armor, which offered far less protection. Anyway, I cracked open my edition of the Ultimate Star Wars Visual Dictionary. I'm not sure if my editor Marmar will be able to find these pages, but I'll do some reading from them. As the Clone Wars became more entrenched, the need for specialization among clone troopers became increasingly apparent. Though a one-size-fits-all approach can provide the Republic with a ready-made infantry, it cannot hope to contend with the dynamic strategies of the CIS and the tactical demands of 1,000 different worlds. My baby decided to pop in at the end there, but the Phase 2 armor was built based on this principle. It was heavily customizable, allowing clones not only to distinguish themselves visually, but to customize their loadout and their suit for different combat environments and missions. That meant some of the stock options on the Phase 1, which were often unneeded, like respiration systems, were dropped and would have to be requisitioned depending on the environment. Phase 2 technology would have also seen general improvements to the tech within the suit, including communications and sensors, which I'm guessing is why Rex kept the top part of his helmet while swapping in the old rebreather from the Phase 1. But because of the lighter material and greater movability, the Phase 2 was probably a little less directly protective, which is something Rex himself even implies in Star Wars Rebels. The clones really began to showcase their personality as the Clone Wars progressed, and they became defined as much by their battalion and their battle experience as they did their initial training and their time on Kamino. So it was probably a benefit to allow individual clones to associate more closely with their squads and battalions, which we see countless times. Plus, of course, it's better if your recon clone doesn't have to wear the same armor or use the same technology as your gunnery clone. Of course, the Empire removed the customization from clones as they transitioned from the Republic to the Empire. The idea was every trooper should look the same, so the Empire seems infinite. They'd stay with the Phase 2 for a while, but eventually would move on to the Stormtrooper armor we see in the original trilogy. All right, quick question. This comes from Timmy, who's a little bit confused because I thought there was only one Thrawn story, and that's understandable. When people say the Thrawn Trilogy, generally they mean the original Thrawn Trilogy from the early 90s in Star Wars Legends, which introduces Thrawn, and at the end, well, I won't spoil it if you haven't read it, but afterwards in Star Wars Legends, there was also the Thrawn Duology, 2 books, Spectre of the Past and Vision of the Future, and, well, I don't want to spoil why the Thrawn Duology is kind of a funny name for them, but I'll just say it's really about his legacy, and it sort of closes that era of Star Wars storytelling. There is more, however. There was also what I guess Star Wars is now calling the Imperial Trilogy, which was a trilogy of new canon Thrawn books starting in 2017. I actually really liked the original, or rather the first Thrawn book there. Like all the other novels mentioned, this one was also written by Timothy Zahn. But just to make things more confusing, there's another Thrawn trilogy, which is the Ascendancy trilogy. This one is completely different. It's about Thrawn and his time with the Chiss. It really, at times, doesn't even feel like a Star Wars book because it's completely separate from the rest of the galaxy. I'll be honest, I didn't love the Ascendancy trilogy, but for some people, it's totally their bag. I'm going to try to cut this video off because my baby is just going hog wild, but one final question. Nerds for Life says, I know the Empire had interdictors, but how many other factions before and after had them? The Essential Guide to Warfare has a really nice section on this. It explains that true interdiction vessels like the Interdictor class Star Destroyers are a modern solution. In the past, factions would instead interdict vessels by pulling asteroids into hyperspace lanes. Or it also mentions as an alternative scattering chaff like ice or dust across a hyperspace lane. The first starship-based interdictors were created 4,000 years before the Battle of Yavin during the Mandalorian Wars, but they were weak and were actually outpaced by better hyperdrive technology. The Clone Wars restarted the technological battle here, and it does seem like the Republic actually had several early interdictor classes. I've heard of the Detainer, the CC-2200, there may be others, but these were significantly advanced compared to the old interdictor class cruisers of the prior millennia. It is funny, you talk about the interdictor from Knights of the Old Republic, the Sith ship, well, originally a Jedi ship during the Mandalorian Civil Wars. It's implied by this article and other sources that it actually did have interdiction capabilities, we just don't really see it. Anyway, the Empire would make major steps. Interdiction capabilities could be added to other vessels, albeit with extreme power requirements and overall sacrifices to the vessel's design. Again, famously, we have the Interdictor class Star Destroyer, which is dominated by those interdiction bulbs. However, the technology was miniaturized by the New Republic and the Galactic Alliance, and we hear about ships like the Mon Mothma, which have interdiction capabilities, but on their outside appear to be regular Star Destroyers, which is a pretty convenient bit of starship design. Other super large vessels like Super Star Destroyers or battleships would have had interdictors built in without the same sort of sacrifice just due to their extra space and power. Good example of this would have been the Eclipse class Star Destroyer that also had interdiction capabilities. But that's all I got. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the baby mumbling in the background. He actually just stopped my recording. But that's all. See you guys next time. May the Force be with you. Bye-bye.
This is the love making.